Hey, welcome back to the Branch 458 podcast. I'm Casey Ritchie. I just wanted to get something out. It'll be a little different than what we usually do, hopefully, a little bit more educational. I have two topics I'd like to talk about. Just because it's the holiday season, there's a lot of things going on around this time of the year. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is the holiday annual leave exchange. And then the other one is annual leave draw coming up. So, I'll start with the holiday leave exchange. It's kind of simple, but it can be complicated if you don't know where to look or understand it. So hopefully I can shed some light on that. But we'll start in Article 11. That's where it talks about holiday scheduling. Article 11 is titled Holidays. The holiday leave exchange is something that other crafts have been able to do in the past. It's something that we gained in our previous collective bargaining agreement. So in 2021, we were able to start using this provision. Um, so just what is holiday leave exchange? That's whenever carriers, if you are working on your holiday, you are able to make the decision of whether you want to be paid 8 hours for the holiday pay, or you can now exchange that for annual leave. So you don't get both. It's one or the other, and it's at your option, but it's only if you work your holiday. So, for example, the next holiday coming up would be Christmas, and that falls on a Wednesday this year, and it is Brown Day off. So Brown, your non-scheduled day does not change. It will never move. But your holiday will be the previous scheduled day that you work. So it will be on the 24th on Tuesday. So if you volunteer to work on Tuesday, that will be your holiday, and you will have the option of whether or not you want to get 8 hours of annual leave or the 8 hours of holiday. Where that is in the contract is in Article 11. It's in several spots. So section 3, 4, and 8 have all been modified. Like I said, the last tentative agreement that was passed, our collective bargaining agreement, it was added to Article 11. So all the language is the same, it's identical. So I'll just read one of them. It reads, effective with the 2021 Independence Day holiday, employees who work their holiday at their option may elect to have their annual leave balance credited with up to 8 hours of annual leave in lieu of holiday leave pay. So just like I explained, it's one or the other. You can't get both. But I like this. I don't think I've ever actually I've used it once. So I like it because whenever you receive holiday pay, it's at your current pay rate. And I kind of look at this as a added benefit. It's kind of like a savings account without any interest. So um, you get to do that holiday leave exchange, and it credits your annual leave balance for 8 hours. So you get 8 hours of annual leave and you can use it whenever you want. So you may have a step increase coming up. You may hold on to that and roll it over into the next year. We may get general wage increases. We may get COLA raises. Who knows what increases we'll get, but you can hang on to that. Of course, the maximum carryover still applies for each year, but you can hang on to that. And whenever you use it, it's whatever rate you're earning at that time. So, if you're step C during the holiday and you do the holiday leave exchange and you don't use that annual leave until you're step D or E, I mean, you just got interest on that money and it was just sitting there. It's for a benefit for you. Or, you might be in that 3 years or less, which I'll talk about here in a little bit for the annual leave draw whenever I talk about that. But if you're an employee with 3 or less years, under 3 years of service, sorry, so it's under 3 years of service, you get 104 hours of annual leave credited to you for the leave year, which is about 13 days. So if you exchange, the 8 hours of holiday leave for the 8 hours of annual leave, you could add 8 hours to that 104 hours that you get credited. So I think it's a big benefit. It's something that each carrier may want to do if you need the 8 hours of holiday pay at the time, do that. But it's definitely an option that you can do the holiday leave exchange. So how do you do it? As soon as you know that you're scheduled for the holiday, fill out a 3971. Off to the left side, it'll say type of absence. That's where you check if you want annual leave, LWOP, sick leave, um, whatever option you're choosing. There is an option, and it's right under annual. It's the second option on the form. It says holiday slash ALLVEXCH, and that just means holiday annual leave exchange. So you will select that option, fill in all the other criteria above it, your name, your EIN, the date that you submitted it. So it's the date you're turning it in. 8 hours, of course, because you're going to be receiving 8 hours of annual leave in exchange for your holiday. Fill out your installation, the other applicable things you fill in there, and then you're going to put the date of the holiday. So, in our example earlier, Brown on Christmas, your holiday is on the 24th. So you will put 12/24 on the date, and then in the description, in the remarks, you want to write something like annual leave credit in lieu of holiday pay or annual holiday annual leave exchange, just something to explain what it is. Sign it and turn it in, and that's pretty much all you have to do. Now, I would check your virtual time card to make sure that this is input correctly. And the only reason I say that is because if they pay you the holiday leave, it's hard for them to switch it to back to the credited annual leave until you pay the holiday leave back. So it could create some letters of demand where they're having you pay that back before they'll credit you the annual leave and stuff like that. So if you can catch it before it happens, just check your virtual time card. Maybe even ask management, "Hey, did you get my time input?" Which they should be returning the 3971 when that time is recorded. So just keep track of that. Something that I haven't mentioned is this also applies to CCAs. So that will be in Article 11, Section 8. It references CCAs and how many hours they receive for holiday. So I will put a link in the description of an article from the Postal Record. It's from June of 2021, where you can read that. It talks about how many hours CCAs get, but if they work on their holidays, which their holidays would be on the actual holiday, then they can also do the holiday annual leave exchange. So there is that. If you have any questions about that at all, just email 458podcast@gmail.com. But moving on, let's go into um, leave draw. So there's a few things about this. Some of it is going to be very specific to Oklahoma City, but some of it will be applicable to everybody if you're listening from outside of Oklahoma City. Um, if you go to Article 10 in the contract, it talks about how much leave you get for the leave year. It's on page 10-3 in the JCAM. If you have less than 3 years of seniority on the day that you're drawing leave in your installation, then you receive 104 hours or 13 days of annual leave. If you have 3 years but less than 15 years, you will receive 160 hours or 20 days for the leave year. And then if you have 15 years or more, you will receive 208 hours or 26 days. So that's how it's broken down. And that's not really something that, we negotiate. That's something that's set by OPM. That's standard for the all of federal government. So that's where those breakdowns are. Of course, in each one of those categories, if you look on your check, you're not 100% sure which category you are in. If you're getting 4 hours per check, you are in that first category of less than 3 years. If you are getting 6 hours of annual leave per check, you are in the second category, the 3 years, but less than 15. And then, of course, if you get 8 hours per check, then you're in the plus 15-year range and you're receiving the 208 hours per year. So, this is something that's very important that kind of gets overlooked every year. Whenever you're selecting your leave for annual leave draw, you just want to make sure that you have the leave whenever you're selecting it. And what I mean by that is if you select the first week in the year, which happens to be January 6th through January 12th. So that's the first week you can select according to the Oklahoma City LMOU, anyway. That's the first week you can select. If you don't have your leave yet, then you won't be able to take it. And I'll read the provision of the LMOU that I'm talking about here in a minute. But uh, ELM 512.112 specifies what the leave year is and when you get your annual leave credited to you. And that's the amounts I just talked about. So when do you get those amounts this year? For 2025, the leave year of 2025, everybody gets credited their annual leave balance on January 11th. So if you select something that's before January 11th and you don't have the annual leave, you may not be able to take it. But that's found, like I said, it's in 512.12, section A. So it talks about leave year. The year beginning with the first day of the first complete pay period in a calendar year and ending on the day before the first day of the first complete pay period in the following calendar year. So that's the reason that it's January 11th, is because that's the beginning of the first complete pay period in the new calendar year. So be sure to pay attention to that. If you're selecting something before January 11th, you may not be able to use it because you may not have the annual leave balance to take it. So just keep that in mind. So now let's go to the LMOU for Oklahoma City. I'm just going to read portions of that. Like I said, this might be um, a section that's specific to the city. If you're outside of Oklahoma City, look at your LMOU to see when your leave draw begins. But here, I'll be reading this is specific to Oklahoma City. So beginning December 20th of each year, supervisors in each station or branch will record the names of the NALC, has notified them as being delegates to the national and or state conventions on the annual leave selection sheet. Immediately after, the supervisor will circulate annual leave selection sheets among the carriers, beginning with the senior carrier at the station or branch. There will be two annual leave draws, with the second beginning immediately after the completion of the first. Item 7 applies to the first draw. So I want to pause right here and actually go to item 7 and read that. It's short, so that's why I'm going to pause. I was reading item 4. I'm going to pause and go to item 7. So letter carriers earning 20 or more days annual leave per year may select up to 15 days annual leave in units of 5 or 10 days. Two selections are allowed. Letter carriers earning 13 days may select up to 10 days of annual leave in units of 5 or 10 days, two selections allowed. So, what does that mean in layman's terms? So, if you are a letter carrier with 3 or more years of seniority, you're in the second or third category, earning 6 hours or 8 hours of annual leave per check. You can select up to two selections. One of your selections has to be up to 5 days. One of your selections has to be in units of 5 or 10 days. So typically that means that if you make two selections, one of your selections can be 2 consecutive weeks. So you can select up to 3 weeks, but if you select 3 weeks, two of them have to be consecutive because it's in units of 5 or 10 days. So just keep that in mind whenever you're selecting those. If you have under 3 years, of seniority, you're in the 13-day uh, category, then you can select up to 10 days of annual leave in units of 5 or 10 days, two selections allowed. So if you can find weeks where you're only using the 5 or 10 days, and you can do the same thing in the previous category I just talked about, and you can possibly select up to 3 weeks, but again, typically those 2 weeks have to be consecutive. So um, two selections in units of 5 or 10 days. So let's go back to item 4. Hopefully, I explained that well. Um, First round, you can select two selections in units of 5 or 10 days. Depending on which category you're in, is uh, is how many days you can select. So uh, just look at those and verify with your steward or your manager what category you're in. We'll have a seniority list before leave draw starts on December 20th. So just keep that in mind. So going back to item 4, the second draw can be portion or all of the carrier's remaining annual leave earned that year in units of 5 or 10 days. So second draw, you get to pick as many weeks as you can in units of 5 or 10 with the remaining balance that you have. So if your first round, let's say you're in the second category and you're earning 20 days of annual leave and you only select 1 week in your first round for some reason. In your second round, you could have 15, 16, 17 days left, um, and you get to select as many weeks as possible to use those remaining days in units of 5 or 10 days. Any carrier holding the selection sheet more than 48 hours may be passed over, but shall have the right to re-enter the process without bumping previous selections when he or she makes a selection. So if it's your turn, you have 48 hours to make a selection. If you don't make a selection within those 48 hours, the leave draw sheet, the master sheet, is going to continue on to the next person. And if at any point before it gets to your turn again, for the second round, you can enter your picks, and you're just going to be slotted in wherever the turn is, but you can't bump anyone that's already selected. So if it's gone like 5 people past you and they already filled up the week that you wanted, well, it's too bad. You can't bump them off that week. You're going to have to select another week. So you only get 48 hours to select what week you're going to pick, or it's going to move on. It is the intent of the parties that the carrier should plan selections in advance. During the draws, if a carrier desires leave at the beginning of the year and the selection sheet has not been passed to them, he or she shall make the selection on a Form 3971. This request will be approved if less than the allowed percentage is scheduled off. Each selection will close one slot. Supervisors should ensure the movement of the selection sheet within the time frame so the process can be completed as expeditiously as possible. Carriers on extended leave may mail their selections to the station or branch manager, who will record it on the selection sheet. If the period is full, the manager will contact the carrier to determine alternative selections. Carriers on light or limited duty for more than 30 days will draw annual leave at the unit where assigned. Carriers who are on 204B status will not submit any annual leave requests for the leave as carriers. Upon returning to carrier status, they may request annual leave for periods not full. Annual leave used by carriers in a 204B status will not be charged against the percentage allowed off. Carriers who are on detail to other duties outside the carrier craft will draw annual leave in that detail. This leave will not be charged to the percentage allowed off. When a carrier who has drawn annual leave decides not to take all or part of their scheduled leave, the declined leave will be posted for bid by seniority or relative standing, starting with the carrier immediately junior to the carrier who vacated the period. This will commence immediately upon notice of vacating the leave. All carriers in the unit will be notified the period is available by the carrier signing a Form 13 declining the leave. The Form 13 will be posted on the bulletin board. This includes leave draw by a carrier who has a 204B status when the scheduled leave date arrives. This is also this also includes any carriers who have left the city letter carrier craft in the Oklahoma City installation due to including but not limited to retirement, resignation, transfer, or death. When a carrier moves from one unit to another by assignment or bid, they will take their scheduled leave periods with them. Such movement will not open up a slot in the losing unit. So I know there was a lot there, but I think most of it was pretty self-explanatory. If you are in a 204B status, you cannot draw leave as a city carrier during that time. But if you return to the city carrier craft, you can select what's open, what's left. If you're in another detail outside of city carrier craft, so like if you're on a district detail for the Postal Service, um, I'm not talking union details because those are still in the carrier craft. I'm talking like if you work in the district office, if you work in HR on a detail, then you would not draw leave with the city carrier craft. And then if you bid out of the station, you still get those leave slots that you selected. But of course, it doesn't open up a slot at the station that you bid out of. So if there's any questions about that, just email the 458podcast at gmail.com. And then city carrier assistants, how do they fall into this? So CCAs get to draw leave. So I'll read that section. It's at the end of item 4. Upon completion of the career carrier's first annual leave draw, the selection sheet will be passed among the non-career city carrier assistant (CCA), beginning with the CCA with the highest relative standing through the CCA with the lowest relative standing at the unit where assigned. CCAs will be given the opportunity to submit a leave draw consisting of up to 2 selections of 5 days, not to exceed a total of 10 days, in order of the highest relative standing. CCAs choosing 10 days must have their second selection during the week in which their break in service begins. This will be the CCA's annual leave selection. In the event a CCA is moving to a different unit due to reassignment or conversion to a career position, they will maintain their annual leave selections provided they have the requisite leave balance. And this is for all carriers. So, all carriers, if a carrier does not have sufficient leave balance to cover approved selections during the leave year, the selection shall be canceled in whole or in part. For leave in excess of the balance, the carrier will be given the choice of which days in the selection that will be canceled. So, just quickly going back to the CCAs, they will do their annual leave selections immediately after the first round of annual leave draw for the career carriers. So, for the regular carriers, they will select up to 10 days and they can do 2 selections. If they make 2 selections, one of their selections must be their break in service week. So the way that the contract is right now, they have to have their leave to take it. So if CCAs just went on their break in service, of course they won't accrue 40 hours of annual leave until I think it's like 3 months because they earn for a check, 4 hours of pay period. So it's about 3 months until they can take an annual leave again. So I always recommend that city carrier assistants keep that in mind whenever they're selecting their weeks. If they select 2 selections again, one of them must be their break in service week. And then for all carriers, this goes with what I was saying earlier. You get your annual leave credited to you January 11th, the leave year. So if you're selecting something in that first week and you don't have the leave for it, management can deny that leave. They can cancel that leave in whole or in part. And according to our LMOU, the carrier will be able to select which portion of the week that will be canceled. So keep that in mind. I'm sure I did not cover everything, but hopefully that helps. Everybody plan for your annual leave draw coming up. It's again, Oklahoma City begins December 20th. If you have any questions about it, hopefully it was clear earlier. Um, but if not, please feel free to reach out to me at 458podcast@gmail.com. And that's all I had for today. I'll still try to put these episodes out and hopefully cover different topics. But everybody enjoy this holiday season. Stay safe out there and bundle up in the cold.